Hey, this is Off the Cuff, and I'm Steve from TorahFamily.org. Today we want to talk about hearing the phrase, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." That's a phrase I think most everybody imagines in their mind at one time or another hearing when we cross to the other side. But have we ever thought about what does it really take? What do we need to do to be able to be sure that we do hear those words? It's like we know that if you live a life that's pleasing to Him, well, then obviously you're going to hear those words. But if you don't live a life that's pleasing to Him, well, then maybe you're not. So we have to ask ourselves, what do we need to do to live that pleasing life? So let's look at some verses and see what we come up with. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Finally, brothers, we instructed you on how to live in order to please God, as in fact you are living. Now we ask you and urge you in the Lord Jesus to do this more and more. We all like to be complimented. It's simply in our DNA. It's simply in us to want to hear flattering words about ourselves. Be it from a parent, be it from a coworker, a friend, especially from a boss. We all like to be complimented. Accolades just have a way of putting that extra spring in your step, if you will. They make you feel so much better about yourself. Now, again, it's in us to want to hear those kinds of things said about us. They help us in our confidence in just so many ways. But at the same time, they can come from sources that, well, we don't really expect. I remember a few years back when I was putting my children to bed. The youngest one, he looked up at me and he simply said, "You are the best dada ever." And that was quite a few years ago. But if you're a parent, you know what I mean. It's like those are things and events and times you just will never forget. You won't trade it for anything. It's something you'll cherish, right? Because of that source where it came from and what it meant to them and what it means to you all the more. As I walked back to my laptop after putting them to bed, I wondered, what is the greatest compliment that we can receive? Well, obviously, my mind went immediately to Matthew chapter 25. The man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5. "Master," he said, "you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more." His master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." Well done, good and faithful servant. It's obviously your desire to want to hear those words. It's in all of us to want to hear Him say that to us when we get to the other side, just to look at Him and have Him say that. Wow, we want that. However, your desire to hear that has to be walked out in our everyday life, that we live for Him. Just wanting it is not enough. We have to live it out. It's to be exemplified in how we live. But how do we really do this? Just claiming that we're a believer, is that enough? Obviously, that's not enough. If we look just at Matthew chapter 7, it explains this. It says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and perform many miracles?' Then I will tell them plainly, 'I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers.'" Now, I don't know about you, but these words should make all of us hit the pause button on life and start thinking things through just a little bit deeper. Because these were people who obviously thought they were serving the Lord. But the question is, were they serving the Lord on His terms or their own? We can say we love the Lord, but what defines love? What defines love in a relationship? We have to ask this question. Okay, think of it this way. Okay, let's just say I bought my wife a motorcycle, and I said that I did it because I love her. Okay, now for what it's worth, my wife doesn't like motorcycles. Okay, now on the other hand, I do like motorcycles. Now, I'm not real good. Well, I can't ride motorcycles. I've ridden them a couple of times, okay, but I still like them. I like the way they look. I just don't trust myself on one, okay? But I really like the way they look, except for the choppers. I don't like the ones where they got to ride like this. How do they do that? Anyway, but I like motorcycles. However, though I may like motorcycles, okay, and I may like the gift that I got my wife, the motorcycle, but what if my wife doesn't? Okay, how have I showed love to my wife? How would she perceive that love that I've given her? Okay, should I base my love for her on what I want to give her or on what she wants to receive? It should be on what she wants to receive, right? I mean, that's how I would show that I love her, because I'm giving her something that she wants, not what I want to give. So we have to ask ourselves, what pleases the Father? What is it He desires from us? Because as exemplified by Matthew chapter 7, it doesn't matter what we want to give Him. What matters is what He wants to receive. If you listen to anything I say in this little teaching, please listen to this. Everything we do for Yahweh is absolutely meaningless if it's not what He desires. Let me say that again. Everything we do for Yahweh is absolutely meaningless if it's not what He desires. Think about it for a minute. The servant in Matthew 25 was told, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Okay, well, faithful in what though? What is it the Father has given us to do to be faithful in? Have we ever asked ourselves this question before? Comparing this against the verses given to us in Matthew chapter 7, it obviously isn't that of prophesying, driving out demons, or even performing miracles. Now, no doubt these can be evident in the lives of the faithful, but it's obviously not what the Father is looking for in the light of faithfulness. In fact, I really think it should be noted here that these very things can be evident in one's life who claims to be a believer. So you can claim to be a believer, okay, and have these things in your life. Yet, they could still not be considered faithful in the eyes of the Father. In all honesty, this should make all of us, I mean all of us, set some time aside for some serious soul searching. I'm serious. This is time you like be going, okay, wait a second. If these people who claim to be believers had all this awesome stuff in their life, but yet they're rejected because they weren't faithful. Folks, this is huge, okay? We have to make this some things in our life and just start thinking, okay, let's set this time aside and start asking, what does He want? Okay. Because obviously those are not things that He, quote, wanted in their life. Not to say that He didn't want them to have it, but that's not what He was focused on for them. What is it that we can glean, I'm talking glean as much as we can from Matthew chapter 7 to truly understand just what it is the Father is longing for us to be faithful in? Because it's obviously those things are good, but that's not the stuff He's longing for us to be faithful in. Okay. I'm hoping we're getting this. Personally, I really believe it is found in the last sentence mentioned to those He sends away. He says, "Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evil doers." The Greek for evildoers actually means workers of lawlessness. Workers of lawlessness. What did He say next? Verse 24, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock." Okay, well, what words did He speak? John 14:10. "Don't you believe that I am in the Father, and that the Father is in me? The words I say to you are not just my own. Rather, it is the Father living in me who is doing His work." John chapter 14. "He who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me." The very words Yeshua spoke was the eternal Word of God. John chapter 7. Jesus answered, "My teaching is not my own. It comes from Him who sent me." John chapter 12. "For I did not speak of my own accord, but the Father who sent me commanded me what to say and how to say it." So what words was He speaking in Matthew chapter 7? Matthew chapter 7 is actually a conclusion of what He began in Matthew chapter 5. This is where He said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished." So, until heaven and earth pass, the law will not be done away with. Now we can understand His statement when He said, "Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evil doers," or workers of lawlessness. Again, until heaven and earth pass, the law will not be done away with. This parallels what Yeshua said in Matthew chapter 23. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to His disciples, "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, so you must obey them and do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach." So Yeshua said to obey Moses, meaning to obey the law, but not to obey the Pharisees who teach the law. So He's saying obey the law, the eternal law, the law that it's not been done away with. So it's the eternal word that we're to pursue in pleasing the Father, and not what we deem as worthy to give Him in our relationship with Him. For as mentioned in Matthew chapter 7, not everyone who says to me, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. To do Yahweh's will, His eternal instructions. John chapter 7. If anyone chooses to do God's will, he will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own. Now, how will anyone find this out? Because they have the written word, the law, to test His words too. So, is your service to God pleasing you or Him? Now, can it be both? Of course, absolutely it can be both. In fact, it should be both. But our focus needs to be on Him, pleasing Him first. Actually, only. In doing this, it will be pleasing to us as we serve and focus on Him and what He wants from us. That's when we get joy, when we're pleasing Him. Examine your heart. Are you living your life for how you want to love Him or how He wants to be loved? This is truly critical. In fact, I would say it's extremely critical. So much so that it may be the deciding factor of you hearing Him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Think about it. Pray about it. But more than anything, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only. Until next time, Shalom.